6 years she spent teaching others to believe in goodness. But on the night of April 5th to 6th, 2025, that goodness twisted into pain. Victoria Tonenchuk, aged 27. A blogger, an educator, someone who always chose the light. She was found in a field, unconscious, with broken ribs and a severe traumatic brain injury. Standing nearby was him, the man who called himself her love. He told a witness, "Don't call the police, everything's under control." Within hours, Victoria was fighting for her life in intensive care. What happened in the settlement of Hliboka would soon shock all of Ukraine and force the country to ask itself, where does love end and abuse begin? When Victoria made her entrance into this world in 1998, it was a real miracle for her parents, long awaited. From early childhood, she bathed in parental care and attention, in an atmosphere of calm and kindness, where her father provided for the family, and her mother devoted herself to the home and raising their children. From early on, Victoria stood out for her industriousness and kindness. She got straight A's, showed aptitude for languages and the humanities. After finishing high school, she entered the Faculty of International Relations and quickly earned a reputation as a responsible and driven student. Her parents were proud of her and believed their daughter's future would be stable. But fate dealt Victoria a crushing blow in 2020. Her mother suddenly died from a blood clot while on the way to the clinic, becoming her toughest ordeal. She was left with her father and took on the responsibility for the home, saying she must do everything so that he would be proud of her. At the same time, in the same region, lived Yuri Yurkovich. His childhood passed in an ordinary family where his father was often away working abroad and his mother labored in a currency exchange shop. Yuri was withdrawn, prone to irritation, and reacted sharply to criticism, while being heavily dependent on his parents' opinions. After school, he entered university, but without any serious life direction. After her mother passed away, Victoria Tonenchuk made a decision. She would build her future on her own terms. Staying in the small town where grief constantly hung in the air and where her local job offered no real security was taking a toll on her mental health. In the spring of 2021, in search of a new beginning, Victoria joined a work program and moved to Israel. There, she found her place working as a preschool teacher. The job was demanding, physically and emotionally, but it allowed her to support herself and send help back to her father. Life in a different country taught her how to be self-reliant. Victoria adapted quickly, took on new responsibilities, and built a network of new relationships. She spent her free time learning the language and diving deep into self-education. Before long, she felt ready for more. She moved to Poland, where she secured a job that paid better and came with a steady schedule. She spent close to 2 years in Poland. Slowly, she was able to build up her savings and start forming long-term plans. Emigration had never been her final goal. Victoria's true desire was always to return home and build a life there. In late 2023, she returned to the Chernivtsi region of Ukraine. Her father welcomed her back not as a girl, but as a grown woman who had made something of herself. Once home, Victoria threw herself into growing her personal blog. At first, it was casual, day-to-day posts and thoughts, but over time, she refined her content, added regular live streams, and drew in a growing audience. The blog started generating consistent income, turning from a hobby into a full-time source of earnings. Victoria began planning to scale the project. She explored partnerships and considered joining charity efforts. She built a disciplined routine that let her balance personal life, fitness, and digital content creation. Her financial independence gave her confidence. At this point, her life seemed stable. She had friends around her, meaningful work, and clear goals. After years of pushing forward, of rebuilding and surviving, Victoria had finally found her balance. But it was in that moment, when she started planning her future, that someone entered her life, someone who would change its course completely. In the summer of 2024, Victoria Tonenchuk received a message from a young man she'd never met before, Yuri Yurkovich. He was from the same small town of Hliboka, but their paths had never crossed. Yuri had just turned 18, fresh out of high school, and starting his first year at university. Victoria, at the time, was 27. Despite the age gap, their conversation started casually. Yuri said he followed her blog, asked questions, shared stories about himself. What began as a simple exchange soon turned into daily messages. Victoria didn't read too much into it. To her, it was light, harmless interaction. But Yuri was persistent. He messaged her every day, asked about her life, and pushed for a meeting. They met for the first time a few weeks later. According to people close to her, Victoria came back from that meeting in a good mood, saying Yuri seemed polite and thoughtful. Gradually, the messaging turned into something more. Yuri started appearing in photos with her. They went out together in public, and no one raised concerns at first. Some of Victoria's friends asked about the age difference, but she dismissed it, saying age wasn't a big deal. At that point, she genuinely believed that Yuri's youth was made up for by his honesty. But it wasn't long before Victoria's friends and family noticed troubling signs. Yuri started calling. Often. Too often. He constantly wanted to know where she was, who she was with, how long she'd be out. At first, Victoria saw it as a form of caring. Then the late-night calls started. If she didn't respond right away, she'd get a flood of messages asking where she was and why she wasn't answering. Bit by bit, Yuri's behavior became controlling. He began demanding that Victoria let him know her every move, where she was going, who she was meeting, even sending him photos to prove it. What alarmed her inner circle most was how jealous he became of her online presence. Any comment or like on her social media posts would spark suspicion and sometimes anger. Victoria tried to avoid confrontation. She chalked it up to his youth, his immaturity, saying to friends that he was just jealous and would grow out of it. Her father noticed changes too. Victoria had become more anxious, more private about her personal life. But she kept insisting everything was fine. Despite all the red flags, Victoria didn't see the situation as dangerous. She still believed Yuri would mature, that his jealousy would fade if she stayed patient. What she didn't yet realize was that this concern he kept showing wasn't care at all. It was the beginning of full-blown control, and that control was about to turn into something much darker. By the fall of 2024, Yuri Yurkevich's behavior shifted dramatically. Simple things, a night out with friends, a post on her blog, now triggered accusations. If Victoria did anything without checking in first, it led to arguments. Loud, escalating, and more frequent than ever. Yuri started demanding photo proof of everything Victoria said. If she went out to a cafe or just for a walk, he wanted her to send pictures, proof that no other men were around. Day by day, his behavior became more irritable, more controlling. Victoria's online work soon became another trigger for conflict. He claimed that her public presence embarrassed him, that it made their relationship a spectacle for everyone to see. At first, he voiced his displeasure. Then he went further, outright forbidding her from running her blog, even though it was her only source of income. Yuri wasn't working at the time, yet he demanded she follow his rules. Victoria's friends noticed the changes almost immediately. She became withdrawn, distant. She stopped sharing details of her personal life, avoided get-togethers. By late October, they saw bruises on her arms. When they asked, Victoria quietly admitted it happened after a fight with Yuri, that he had struck her She insisted it was a one-time thing, that it was over, that he regretted it. According to those close to her, Victoria refused to file a report. She told them she didn't want to ruin a young man's life. She believed he just didn't know how to handle his emotions. Her friends tried to convince her otherwise, warning that behavior like that doesn't simply stop. But she wouldn't listen. People around her could tell the situation was spiraling. Despite her calm demeanor, Victoria began justifying his actions, blaming his stress, his jealousy, his youth. Over time, those excuses became routine. What she saw as temporary issues, others recognized as a dangerous pattern, the start of a cycle she couldn't see from the inside. The beginning of 2025 brought tragedy. On January 4th, a new argument broke out between Victoria Tonenchuk and Yuri Yurkovich, once again fueled by jealousy. That evening, Yuri showed up at Victoria's home. The conversation quickly escalated. According to investigators, Yuri struck Victoria multiple times, between 10 and 15 blows to the head and body. She was hospitalized with numerous injuries. Doctors documented hematomas, internal bleeding, and extensive bruising. The wounds were serious, but the medical report categorized them as minor physical harm. That classification would later raise questions. The injuries clearly showed signs of a severe assault. Victoria received medical treatment and the case materials were forwarded to the police. She filed an official statement detailing what had happened and naming Yuri as the person responsible. Victoria's family and close friends saw her report to the police as a turning point, a step toward finally ending things with Yuri. They all hoped this meant she was done with him. But just a few weeks later, she did something no one expected. Victoria withdrew the report and asked for the case to be closed. She explained that she didn't want to ruin a young man's life, that she believed he understood the gravity of what he'd done. Even her closest friends were shocked. Her father tried to talk her out of it, urging her not to give up her right to legal protection. But Victoria stood firm. According to him, she said, "He's still young. There's no need to destroy his future." Later, her friends recalled seeing photos of bouquets posted to her social media, ones they believed were from Yuri. Everything pointed to Victoria trying to convince herself that maybe things could get better. Despite everything that had happened, she never fully cut him off. She said she wanted to avoid drama, to keep things peaceful. But Yuri didn't seem remorseful at all. People around them noted that he acted like nothing serious had ever happened. Even though the case was officially closed after Victoria withdrew her report, the tension never truly went away. It might have looked like a peaceful resolution from the outside, but inside, it felt more like Yuri had simply avoided consequences. Victoria tried to return to normal life. She resumed blogging, kept communication with Yuri to a minimum. Her family hoped this was the end of the story. Victoria rarely mentioned his name, avoided details when asked. Still, Yuri kept reappearing. And while she kept a calm exterior, those close to her noticed it was just that, an exterior. She stopped opening up, but the stress never left her. By early spring, Victoria seemed more grounded. She talked about the future, kept busy, and avoided the past. But to Yuri, their separation didn't mean things were over. Not to him. In his mind, the story wasn't finished. It had just moved into a new phase. On April 5th, 2025, Victoria Tonenchuk was planning for an ordinary day. That morning, she headed into Chernivtsi for a skincare appointment. The procedure took a few hours and went smoothly. Afterward, she texted her friend Yelizaveta. They had planned to meet that evening, but Victoria let her know she'd have to postpone. Her skin needed time to recover. Yelizaveta didn't think much of it at the time. She had no idea that would be the last message she'd ever get from her. Later that evening, Victoria left Chernivtsi. a local taxi driver confirmed he'd given a ride to a man and a woman headed to Hliboka. He said they sat together in the back seat, weren't arguing, seemed calm. They both got out near a gas station, about a 10-minute walk from Yuri Yurkevich's house. After dropping them off, the driver left. The two of them walked together, heading down a road that cut through an isolated stretch of land. Later, investigators would determine that the two had taken a route that cut through open fields and past several abandoned buildings. The street was poorly lit, and at that hour, hardly anyone ever walked that way. About an hour after the pair were dropped off, a local resident heard a woman screaming. The man, who lived nearby, stepped outside and followed the sound. As he got closer, he saw a woman lying motionless on the ground and a young man standing beside her. The man's clothes and hands were stained with blood. When the witness asked what had happened, the young man said the woman had been drinking, fallen down, and didn't need any medical help. The witness offered to call emergency services, but the young man insisted there was no need, claiming the woman's parents were already on their way to take her home. A short time later, a man and woman did arrive. They were later identified as Yuri Yurkevich's parents. They lifted the barely conscious Victoria into their car and drove her to a local hospital. On the way, no one contacted emergency services, a detail that would later raise serious questions during the investigation. At the same time, Victoria's father was trying to reach her by phone. She wasn't answering, which was unusual for her. Hours later, he finally received a call from Yuri's mother. She told him that Victoria was in the hospital, assuring him that nothing serious had happened. But when he arrived, doctors told him the truth. His daughter was in critical condition. By then, Victoria was unconscious. Her injuries, as recorded by medical staff, clearly showed signs of a brutal beating. Yet at that moment, the attacker's name had not been publicly disclosed. That night, everything unfolded too quickly for witnesses to grasp what they had actually seen. The beginning of a crime that would change the course of the entire investigation. When Victoria Tonenchuk was brought to the hospital in Hliboka, her condition was described as extremely grave. She was unconscious, struggling to breathe, and showing signs of internal bleeding. Emergency doctors immediately began an assessment and determined she needed to be transferred urgently to a regional trauma center. Tests revealed severe head trauma, multiple fractures to her ribs and collarbones, and internal injuries to her liver and spleen. The medical team performed resuscitation efforts before placing her on a ventilator. Her condition was classified as comatose. Doctors warned that the prognosis was poor. By that time, Victoria's father had arrived at the hospital. He tried desperately to get details, but the staff could tell him little. They were fighting to keep his daughter alive. The next several days were a constant battle to keep Victoria alive. On April 6th and 7th, doctors reported brief moments of improvement, but each time her condition would crash again. A medical commission confirmed the diagnosis: severe closed head trauma, brain contusion, subdural hematoma, multiple fractures, and internal injuries. Victoria's father stayed at the hospital almost around the clock. He spoke with doctors, demanded updates, and clung to hope. Her friends and followers tracked every bit of news through social media, waiting for official statements. In the small town, rumors spread quickly, but authorities made no public comments. Police limited themselves to collecting preliminary information. On the fourth day, Victoria's condition took a sharp turn for the worse. Her body stopped responding to treatment. Irreversible processes had begun. On April 10th, 2025, in her hospital room, Victoria was pronounced dead. She never regained consciousness, never had the chance to say what had really happened that night. Her death shattered those closest to her. Her father demanded answers: why no one had been arrested, why investigators were still considering the possibility of an accident. Doctors confirmed what her injuries made clear. They were inconsistent with a fall. But despite that, no official charges were filed. At the time of her death, the case was still classified as a preliminary investigation. Yuri Yurkovich appeared in the case materials only as a witness. Victoria's family and friends feared the delays in the investigation could lead to the loss of vital evidence. For them, her death was not only a devastating personal loss, it was the start of a fight for justice. In the weeks that followed, the investigation barely moved forward. Police conducted a few witness interviews, filed some formal requests, and stopped there. Yuri Yurkovich, still mentioned in the case, remained free, still officially a witness. The inaction of law enforcement fueled anger and disbelief among Victoria's loved ones. Her father pushed for explanations. According to him, investigators delayed forensic testing and avoided giving clear answers. One detail troubled him most: the time gap between the assault and Victoria's arrival at the hospital. A witness stated that after the incident, Yuri spent a long time on the phone before his parents showed up. That raised suspicions that crucial evidence could have been destroyed during that time. When Victoria's father finally gained access to her phone, he found that her entire message history with Yuri, every text, every contact, had been deleted. Witnesses also claimed that Yuri had 2 phones that night and that he could have erased the data before medical help arrived. Despite all of this, no charges were ever filed against Yurkovich. Before long, rumors began to spread through the small town of Hliboka. Whispers about the Yurkovich family and their possible connections. People talked about a relative in a high-ranking position and speculated that she might be influencing the course of the investigation. No official confirmation ever came, but one fact was hard to ignore. The arrest of the main suspect kept being delayed with no explanation. As law enforcement remained silent, Victoria's friends decided to speak out. They started sharing details of the case publicly, posting facts, screenshots, and photos online. The story quickly went viral. Local media picked it up. Journalists traveled to Hliboka, interviewed witnesses and doctors, and began uncovering inconsistencies in the investigation. The case exploded into the national spotlight. Online discussions focused on contradictions in the reports, questionable forensic results, and the authorities' lack of action against Yuri. With each passing day, public pressure grew stronger. For Victoria's family, going public became the only way to push the system to act. It was only after the story gained massive attention that police began taking real steps. But by then, precious time had already been lost. After the media coverage broke, residents of Hliboka took to the streets in protest. Crowds gathered, demanding justice, demanding Yuri Yurkovich's arrest, and accusing local authorities of turning a blind eye. Outside Yuri's home, people shouted for accountability, for consequences. And under mounting public pressure, on April 11, 2025, Yuri Yurkovich was finally taken into custody. A court hearing followed a few days later. The judge ruled that Yurkovich would remain in detention with no option for bail. The defense's request for house arrest was denied. In court, Yuri denied any wrongdoing. He claimed that Victoria just fell on her own and that he couldn't remember anything. His statements outraged both Victoria's family and the public. Investigators charged Yurkovich under the statute for causing severe bodily harm resulting in death. But Victoria's relatives are demanding the case be reclassified as intentional murder, insisting the act was deliberate. As of now, Yuri Yurkovich remains behind bars. The investigation continues. The trial itself still lies ahead. and the country waits, hoping that this time justice will finally be served.